Jedi Order was supposed to be the galaxy's ultimate force for good, but over thousands of years, dozens of its members walked away, fell, or were thrown out. Today, we're breaking down every single former Jedi and what happened after they left, starting with the one who did it better than anyone else, Ahsoka Tano. In 19 BBY, a 16-year-old Padawan told the entire Jedi Council that they failed her, and she was right. Ahsoka Tano was framed for bombing the Jedi Temple hangar. The order she'd served since childhood didn't just doubt her. They expelled her, stripped her rank, and handed her to a military tribunal, which is, not ideal when you're 16. When the real bomber was caught, the council offered her a spot back. She said no. A teenager looked the most powerful monastic order in the galaxy in the eye and walked away on principle. Here's the thing. Most former Jedi who leave end up falling. Ahsoka didn't. She survived Order 66, became the Rebel Intelligence Operative Fulcrum, confronted Darth Vader on Malachor, and by 9 ABY was hunting Grand Admiral Thrawn, decades without the Order and zero dark side corruption. Her declaration to Vader says everything. I am no Jedi. She didn't need the title. She kept the ideals. Ahsoka is the gold standard, but not everyone who left the Order came out the other side so cleanly. See her agenda. Most former Jedi leave the Order because they disagree with it. Sari Yunda left because she thought she'd failed it. After Order 66, Siri went into hiding and spent roughly 5 years traveling with a pilot named Grease Dritus. Standard Survivor stuff. But here's what makes her different from every other Jedi on this list. She didn't just stop being a Jedi. She severed herself from the Force entirely. Not because someone cut her off. Not because she lost her abilities. Because the guilt and trauma of what happened during the Purge convinced her she didn't deserve it anymore. That's not a philosophical departure. That's a wound. And the thing is, she was wrong. When she eventually found Cal Kestis on Braca around 14 BBY, mentoring him literally pulled her back into the Force. The connection was never gone. She'd just been punishing herself for years, which is, not ideal. But here's where Siri's story becomes something special. She didn't just reconnect with the Force and ride off into the sunset. She dedicated herself to rebuilding what was lost, establishing a hidden Jedi archive on Jedha. And when Vader came for it, she stood her ground and fought him alone, dying to protect everything she'd built. No survival, no fall to darkness, just a woman who clawed her way back to the light specifically so she could give it away. But not every Order 66 survivor carried that kind of weight. Some simply vanished. Boltar Swan. You saw her face. You just don't remember her name. Boltar Swan was right there in Attack of the Clones, a fully fledged Jedi Knight fighting in the arena on Geonosis alongside every other Jedi we care about. She survived that battle. She may have survived Order 66. And that's basically where the trail goes cold. Here's the thing. In Legends, Boltar Swan had an actual story. She met other surviving Jedi after the Purge, tried to find a peaceful path forward, and was killed for it. Tragic, complete, done, but Legends got wiped from canon, and nobody at Lucasfilm has bothered to fill in the gap. So in current canon, Boltar Swan exists in this bizarre limbo where she's visually confirmed as a Jedi Knight during the Clone Wars, and then just vanishes from the narrative entirely. No death scene, no survival confirmation, no mention in any post-Order 66 material. She's a ghost with a lightsaber and zero explanation. And honestly, that's what makes her interesting. Most former Jedi get a dramatic fall or a heroic last stand. Boltar Swan got nothing. She's a face in the crowd of the prequels, whose entire post-war story is a blank page, which is either a massive missed opportunity or a setup for something nobody sees coming. Speaking of Jedi whose stories got way more complicated after the war, let's talk about Quinlan Vos. Quinlan Vos. The Jedi had a simple rule about the dark side. Touch it once, you're done. Quinlan Vos broke that rule. Vos was a Kifar Jedi with psychometric abilities, meaning he could read the history of objects through touch. Useful skill. Also the kind of thing that constantly exposed him to other people's worst moments. Not ideal for staying balanced. His fall wasn't a philosophical rebellion. It was targeted corruption. The Jedi Council sent him to assassinate Count Dooku during the Clone Wars, and Dooku flipped the script entirely. What followed was textbook grooming. Dooku dismantled Vos's connection to the light, replaced it with rage, and turned a Jedi Knight into a willing Sith weapon. But here's the thing. He came back. Vos broke free, returned to the Order, and kept serving as a general through the end of the war. Whether the dark side left permanent marks is a question nobody got the chance to answer, because Order 66 happened shortly after. His post-purge fate is one of Star Wars' most frustrating loose ends. Legends showed him surviving with his family. Current canon gives us basically nothing, just a background document from Revenge of the Sith, hinting he might have lived. Voss's proof that the Jedi's once you go dark, you stay dark philosophy was flat wrong. He served a Sith Lord and pulled himself back out. That's not nothing. And speaking of people who served Sith Lords and clawed their way back, his story connects directly to someone whose journey was even messier, Asa J.J. Ventress. Here's what makes Ventress fascinating. She was never actually a Jedi, not for a single day. The Order never accepted her, never trained her, never even gave her a chance. A Jedi Knight named Kai Narek found her on Ratatak and trained her privately, but before she could ever be brought into the fold, Narek was killed. And that was it. The door closed permanently. So what happened next? Count Dooku happened. He took this abandoned, grief-stricken Force user and turned her into his personal assassin. For years, Ventress served the dark side, not because she chose it over the light, but because the light never chose her. That distinction matters. Then Dooku betrayed her. On Sidious's orders, he tried to have her killed, which, is a great way to lose an employee. But that betrayal broke the cycle. For the first time in her life, Ventress had zero allegiance to anyone. She became a bounty hunter, independent, answering to nobody. And here's where it gets interesting. Instead of spiraling further into darkness, she started climbing toward the light. She aided the Jedi directly. She fought alongside Quinlan Vos. And when Dooku turned his Force lightning on Vos, Ventress threw herself in the way. She died absorbing that blast. The woman the Jedi rejected proved herself more heroic than half the Order ever was. She didn't fall from the light, she was never given it, and she found it anyway. But if Ventress represents someone who never got to be a Jedi, the next entry is someone who absolutely was one and walked away from everything. Baylan Skoll. Most former Jedi pick a side. They fall to the dark, they cling to the light, or they try some messy combination of both. Baylan Skoll looked at the entire menu and walked out of the restaurant. Trained as a Jedi before the Clone Wars, Baylan survived Order 66 and just kept moving. No revenge arc, no secret rebellion, no Sith Master whispering in his ear. By 9 ABY, he was operating as a mercenary and swordmaster in the outer reaches, taking his apprentice Shin Hati along for the ride and seemingly answering to nobody. Here's where it gets interesting. Baylan isn't dark side, he's not light side either. He's something the Star Wars universe rarely gives us, which is a guy who examined both philosophies and concluded they were both part of the same broken machine. He talked constantly about cycles, about the endless loop of Jedi rising, Sith rising, everyone dying, repeat. His goal wasn't to win the game, it was to flip the entire board. And that's what makes him so unsettling. You can't predict a man who doesn't want what anyone else wants. He wasn't chasing power for power's sake. He was chasing something beyond current understanding of the Force itself. Some doorway, some ancient knowledge, something that could break the pattern permanently. But the frustrating truth is we don't actually know what he found. His character arc in the Ahsoka series feels deliberately incomplete, like a sentence that stops mid-and honestly. That might be the point. But if Baylan rejected both sides out of philosophy, the next former Jedi on our list rejected his out of pure desperation, Bode Akuna. Most former Jedi on this list have a reason, a philosophy, a moment where the dark side whispered something seductive and they leaned in. Bode Akuna has none of that. He survived Order 66. But instead of hiding or fighting back, Bode made a calculation. He looked at the Empire, looked at his daughter, and decided that cooperation was the only path that ended with both of them breathing. So he became a spy. For years, he fed information to the ISB while posing as a freelance pilot, living a completely unremarkable life on purpose. No Sith training, no dark side rituals, no dramatic monologues about the weakness of the Jedi. Just a guy selling out his former brothers and sisters and going home to his kid. Here's the thing. That's what makes Bode the most uncomfortable entry on this list. Every other fallen Jedi gives you something to point at. Dooku had ideology. Malicos had madness. Bode had a mortgage and a daughter. He wasn't seduced. He wasn't broken. He just did the math and decided betrayal was a better deal than martyrdom. And when Cal Kestis finally exposed him, Bode didn't reveal some hidden Sith master pulling his strings. He fought. He fought because the alternative was his daughter losing her only parent. Cal killed him anyway. No redemption arc. No final moment of clarity. Just a dead father on the ground and a kid who lost everything. Was he a coward or a realist? The answer probably says more about you than it does about him. But if Bode's moral ambiguity keeps you up at night, wait until you meet someone who never even got the chance to choose a side at all. Shin Hati. Here's where this list gets technically complicated, because Shin Hati might not even belong on it. She's listed as a former Jedi in the loosest possible sense, and honestly, there's a solid argument she was never a Jedi at all, but that's exactly what makes her interesting. Everything we know about Shin traces back to one man, Baylan Skoll. He trained her, he shaped her, he pointed her at targets and gave her a lightsaber. From what we can tell, this started early, maybe very early. The details of her recruitment, her parents, her life before Skoll, completely blank, zero backstory, which, given the nature of Skoll's own murky philosophy, raises some genuinely uncomfortable questions about how she ended up under his wing in the first place. By the time we see her operating around 9 ABY, she's a legitimately dangerous combatant, proficient with a lightsaber, capable with the Force, and willing to follow orders that put her on the wrong side of basically everyone. On paper, she looks like a dark side enforcer, but here's the thing, she hesitates. Not constantly, not dramatically, but enough that you notice. There are cracks in the loyalty, moments where the conviction falters and something underneath pushes back. She was groomed into darkness before she was old enough to understand what darkness even meant, and yet some part of her resists anyway. Whether that's genuine moral instinct or just the confusion of someone who never got to choose their own path, nobody knows yet. That ambiguity is the entire point of her character. She's a question mark with a lightsaber, and question marks are dangerous, because they can resolve in any direction. But if you want to see what happens when a former Jedi resolves in the worst possible direction, Taron Malicos has your answer. Taron Malicos. Most fallen Jedi have a moment where they know they've crossed the line. Taron Malicos never had that moment, and that's exactly what makes him terrifying. Malicos was a Jedi Master and General during the Clone Wars who survived Order 66 by fleeing to Dathomir, and then he just stayed there for 5 years, alone. No order, no mission, no purpose, just a traumatized man sitting on a planet soaked in dark side energy with nothing but his own thoughts for company, which is, not ideal. Here's the thing about isolation. It doesn't just break you down, it rebuilds you into something new, and you don't even notice it happening. Malicos spent half a decade slowly absorbing the dark side influence of Dathomir, and at every single step, he told himself he was still the good guy. He wasn't falling, he was evolving. He wasn't corrupted, he was enlightened. He developed this entire philosophy about how he was going to protect Force users, save them from making the same mistakes the Jedi did. Noble stuff, really. Except it was all a lie he was telling himself. By the time Cal Kestis found him, around 14 BBY, Malicos was fully gone, ranting about salvation while radiating dark side energy like a space heater radiates disappointment. And the worst part? He believed every word. He genuinely thought he was the hero of his own story, right up until the moment Cal put him down. Compare that to Seri Junda, who endured similar trauma, similar isolation, and actually clawed her way back to the light. Same circumstances, opposite outcome. The difference? Seri was honest with herself. Malicos never was, but if you think self-deception is dangerous, wait until you meet a Jedi who didn't bother deceiving himself at all. He knew exactly what he was doing. Pong Ki Elway. If every other entry on this list made you feel something complicated, good news. This one's simple. Pong Krell is the worst, not the most powerful, not the most tragic, the worst. A Jedi Master, sitting on the Jedi Council's war machine, commanding clone troopers into battle while actively working for Count Dooku the entire time. Every campaign he led was designed to kill as many clones and Jedi as possible. He wasn't conflicted about it, he wasn't being manipulated, he just did it because he wanted to be on the winning side when the Sith took over. Here's the thing, the clones under his command knew something was wrong long before the Jedi Order did. He sent entire platoons into kill zones. He ordered friendly fire scenarios that pitted clone units against each other. He treated every soldier under him like disposable garbage, which, to be fair, the Republic kind of already did. But Krell made it an art form, and when the troopers finally figured out what he was doing, they didn't file a report. They didn't escalate through proper channels, they executed him. In 20 BBY, clone troopers killed a sitting Jedi Master because nobody else was going to do it, which is, not ideal for a system that's supposed to have checks and balances, but the real gut punch isn't Krell himself. It's what his betrayal says about the Jedi Order. He operated as a separatist agent at the highest levels of the Republic military, and nobody sensed it. Nobody questioned it. The Order that was supposed to perceive threats through the Force couldn't even spot a traitor eating lunch in their own cafeteria. And if they couldn't see Krell, they were never going to see what was coming next. Speaking of which, let's talk about the man Krell was working for, Count Dooku. Here's what makes Dooku terrifying. He was right. The Jedi were politically compromised. They were institutionally blind. They had become so entangled with the Republic's bureaucracy that they couldn't see a Sith Lord literally sitting in the Chancellor's office. Dooku saw all of this, and his criticisms were legitimate. Yoda trained him personally, and by the time Dooku walked away from the Order in 32 BBY, he had decades of first-hand evidence that the Jedi had lost their way, and then he went and did something infinitely worse than anything the Jedi ever did. Darth Sidious recruited him, gave him the Sith title Darth Tyrannus, and Dooku proceeded to orchestrate an entire galactic war. Not stumble into one, orchestrate one. He built the separatist movement from the ground up, commanded the droid army, and engineered a conflict that killed millions across hundreds of worlds. Every clone trooper death, every civilian casualty, every planet burned during the Clone Wars traces back to a man who started his journey by saying, "The Jedi have become too political." That's the intellectual darksider in a nutshell. Every single step was reasoned. Every decision was deliberate. He didn't fall to the dark side in a moment of rage like Anakin. He walked toward it with his hands behind his back, convinced he was the smartest person in the room. He wasn't. Palpatine played him like a cheap instrument the entire time. In 19 BBY, Sidious ordered Anakin to execute Dooku on the spot, discarding his own apprentice without a second thought. Dooku's face in that moment says everything. The realization that he was never the partner, he was the tool. Valid grievances, correct diagnosis, catastrophically wrong prescription. Cool. Add that to the list of reasons not to join a Sith Lord. But if Dooku's fall was deliberate, the next one was something else entirely. Revan. Every other former Jedi on this list dabbled. Revan didn't dabble. He built an entire Sith empire from scratch approximately 4,000 years before Luke Skywalker ever touched a lightsaber. We're talking fleets, armies, conquered worlds, the whole package. He wasn't seduced by the dark side over a series of bad decisions. He marched toward it with purpose, accumulated power on a galactic scale, and ruled over it for years, not months. Years. And then the Jedi caught him. Here's where it gets complicated. The Jedi Order didn't kill Revan. They didn't imprison him. They wiped his mind. Completely. Every memory, every identity, every shred of the Sith Lord he'd become, just gone. They essentially created a new person and pointed him at the galaxy like nothing happened. Which is, totally normal and not horrifying at all. But here's the thing. When Revan eventually rediscovered who he really was, when all those memories came flooding back, he didn't return to the dark side. He chose the light, voluntarily. No mind trick, no manipulation, no Jedi Council standing over his shoulder. Just a man staring at the full weight of everything he'd done and deciding to be better. That's not redemption handed to you on a silver platter. That's redemption earned. And then he left the Jedi Order. Again, making him the only former Jedi to walk away twice, the second time to pursue atonement in solitude. His full story lives primarily in legends through Knights of the Old Republic, though current canon acknowledges him as an ancient historical figure in High Republic era materials. The details are fuzzy, the legend isn't. Revan matters because he's the proof that the distance between Jedi and Sith is exactly one decision. He crossed that line in both directions further than anyone else on this list, fell the deepest, came back the furthest. And if that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about what it actually means to leave the Jedi Order, nothing will. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.